Hello, and welcome to Mindset Musings podcast, recorded from officially the most entrepreneurial city in the country, Portsmouth. Ben Miles, co-founder of one of the UK's largest music festivals, and Cy Gardner, co-founder of one of the Hot 100 and fastest growing recruitment companies in Britain, search far and wide for what drives the most successful people from their chosen sectors: business, leadership, sports, and media. Now over to Ben and Simon for this week's show.
For a person involved in sport professionally, representing a country is for most the pinnacle of their career. Chris Tremlett is from a long line of cricketers, and having represented his home county of Hampshire and then neighbours Surrey, Chris was selected for England, and his fast bowling used to great effect, taking 53 wickets for an average of 27 runs.
Chris was a member of that Andy Flowers side that claimed the #1 spot in the world rankings, as well as being used to devastating effect in the 2010 Boxing Day Ashes test at the MCG, with England bowling out Australia for just 98 runs.
We spoke to Chris just a day or so before he flew out to meet up with Kevin Pietersen, Jonathan Trott, Monty Panesar and the rest of his England legend teammates for their win in the Road Safety World Series in India.
Chris talks to us about the mindset required to rise to the very top in the world rankings, the two sides to Ricky Ponting, and why you wouldn't always know which version of Shane Warne's pure genius was going to turn up. Chris Tremlett, thanks very much for joining us on the Mindset Musings podcast.
Good morning, guys. Nice to be here.
Morning, Chris. Thanks for joining us.
We'll go straight into it, Chris. Why cricket? Why did you choose cricket, and how did you get into it?
Fairly, I guess, easy for me to answer that. My grandfather played for Somerset for England. Dad played for Hampshire. So I guess as far back as I can remember, cricket was always played in the family or on the TV, or I had a cricket bat or a ball in my hand as far back as I can remember, kind of 3 or 4 years old. So yeah, it was obviously introduced to me quite early as a kid, and I think I had some kind of natural talent all the way through my kind of childhood years. And I think, like any kids, or when you're good at something, you enjoy it. And I was always a little bit better than everyone else, and at my school or my club, and places I went to play cricket. So naturally, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed watching my dad play when I was younger. So yeah, that's kind of how cricket came about for me from a younger age, and it's just something I kind of kept progressing each year when I was at school or secondary school or college. And I think I got to 13, 14 and thought, I want to do this as a living if I can. So and I'm lucky enough to be sat here, nearly 40 years old, having a pretty good career and being able to represent my country. So yeah, looking back to when I was 3 or 4 years old, it is like a dream come true, really, that I got to achieve those things and experience so many cool things traveling around the world, doing something that you love.
Yeah, it was a fantastic career. Did it ever dawn on you at the time how much of a massive achievement it was to go on and represent England at national level? Represent your country.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I ever kind of took it for granted. Like how hard it was to kind of get to that level. I remember playing at under 19 level, and I think it was the coach at the time, Tim Boone. He kind of read out some stats. When we were playing for under 19s, that how many guys would go on to have like a successful, county career, and how many of us would actually go on to play for England. And I think out of that group, it was Monty Panesar and Ian Bell. It definitely went on to go and play for England. So there's only 3 of us out of that probably 15 squad that went on to actually play internationally. And from some age groups, no one goes on to play for England. So it is such a little pool of people that go on to do that. And I think my test number's 636, I think it is. So yeah, it just puts it into perspective when you look at it that way, that many people have only ever played for England. So it is a big achievement. I guess you don't really think about it too much, and you just take it in your stride. But I think when you look back and when you're retired and you look at some of the things on TV that you've done, or a glimpse of the Ashes might come up, then it's like, oh, that was a pretty cool thing to have been involved in, even though I don't really think about it, or it's still a bit surreal in my eyes. But yeah, it is a big achievement, especially as well when you're 4 or 5 years old, looking up to these superstars. You're like, oh, I'd love to do that one day. And when you achieve it, yeah, I think you try and take it in and think, yeah, I have done something quite special. And you can never have that taken away from you when you have played a test match, or you have taken a wicket for England, or scored a run for England. Like that will always be in the record book. So yeah, I guess you just have to try and enjoy those moments when you can.
It must be a great feeling. I watched back on YouTube earlier the Boxing Day test from the 2010-11 Ashes, when England bowled out Australia for under 100. I think it was 98 in the end. You took 4 really vital wickets in that match. Can you just explain to the people that are listening the context of an England side going to Australia and winning an Ashes series, how huge that is, and the kind of camaraderie and spirit you felt in the squad to be part of that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember being out in Australia in 2002 with the National Academy, and the Ashes were on then. And Australia were just such a dominant force then. England had literally no chance of winning the Ashes back then and down under. And I think even being in the academy and having glimpses of going to bowl in the nets at some of these blokes, you just felt like England never really believed that they would have a chance of beating Australia in Australia. And again in 2006, I was kind of involved in the A squad, and was around the squad, and then I played in the one-day series. And the same sort of feeling was then. I think we lost 5-0, and it was just almost like impossible to beat these guys. So to go back in 2010, granted with a stronger team, and Australia probably weren't quite as dominant as they were in 2006 and 2002. But we had a very strong side with a lot of momentum going into that series. And turning up at the MCG, having been there on other occasions, and being very daunted, it was I guess my opportunity to try and go out there, and not with fear, and just try. And obviously the team were in a good position, but try and go out there with attitude of I'm just going to try and enjoy this and do the best I can. And I think the team really tried to just create history that day. And it was a really good toss to win. It was a bit green. It was kind of English-like conditions, and as bowling in Australia goes, it was as good as you could ask for, with the temperature, and the ball was nipping around. And we just went out there and executed our plans as best as we could, really. It was just a dream day of cricket. Like, you couldn't have asked for anything more, bowling outside for 98 and being 100 off for none at the end of the day when the sun came out. It was literally the best day of cricket I've ever been involved in. I think most guys in that dressing room would say the same. Like, it was just the perfect day of cricket, and the match was kind of lost on day one for Australia, and we knew we were going to probably go on and win that test match. So pretty awesome feeling to go into the ground and play in front of that amount of people and listen to that roar, but also very surreal when Alistair Cook and Andy Strauss were walking off. There was about 20,000 people in the ground because most of the Australians had gone home. So there was just something that we'd never really seen before. It was just very special to be kind of so dominant in Australia, especially that year. And then we went back in 2013. Unfortunately, we lost again, 4-5 0 again. So it just shows how hard it is to win down under, and that tour was very special.
Just on Australia, what was Ricky Ponting like as a kind of opponent?
I mean, I've had both sides of Ricky Ponting because I played with him at Surrey. So I first kind of came across him in 2005 when I played my first one-day series for England. And I just remember the whole Australian team were just very aggressive. I went up to bat as a number 9 or 10 batsman, and just being sledged by everyone. And Ricky Ponting was at point just calling me and every name under the sun, made me feel very uncomfortable. For such a small bloke, just very intimidating, especially as I'm quite a big bloke. He just made me feel this small. So, but also like he was another guy I looked up to as a kid, legend of the game, like an incredible batsman. Just that kind of image of him just putting bowlers into the stands. It kind of fills you with dread at times when running into bowl at him. And my first ball I ever think I had bowled to him was at Perth, or second ball to him, he pulled me off a length and pulled me for 4. I thought, this guy is hard to bowl to. But he just gets stuck in to everyone. He's fully committed, like Shane Warne as well. Once they step over the line, all they want to do is win games of cricket, and they'll do everything they can to win. But at the same time, off the field, played with him at Surrey, he's an absolute gentleman. When he's on your side, he is a great bloke to have on your side. He'll do anything for you. He'll throw balls at the youngsters. He'll make cups of tea for everyone else. Like it's quite surreal when you've got Ricky Ponting making the rest of the team cups of tea. It shouldn't be that way. But yeah, he is just a normal gentleman at the end of the day, but a fierce guy to play against. He was certainly one of the best.
Definitely a natural leader and a thorn in England's side for many years. On the note of sledging, you mentioned the Australians like to call it mental disintegration, I believe, and it features in a documentary which is really good if anyone wants to check it out, called The Edge, which is all around the England squad leading up to that Ashes win in Australia. You just mentioned there that Ricky Ponting got into your brain and made you feel really small. Do you think they were the masters of that, and do you think at any point they took it too far, or do you think it was just very clever gamesmanship?
Yeah, I mean, thinking back, I think I think the older Australian side with Warne and Hayden and Ponting, I think they were a bit cleverer in how they used to sledge people. And certainly Shane Warne, he was just had this way of, it wasn't just like calling people every name under the sun. It was just very clever kind of, he called Ian Bell the Shermanator, which I know got under his skin. Like little things like this that he would just come up with these hilarious little digs, but he knew he'd get under people's skin. It was just clever banter. I think as years have gone by, the Australians have got worse at sledging. Actually, they've just kind of gone overly aggressive and just trying to call people names. And to me, that's not sledging, and people don't really take any notes of that. It's the little kind of clever digs, which have kind of gone out the game a little bit, I think, over the years. But it's also tricky because things are picked up on stump microphones a lot more now. So players have to be a little bit more careful about how they go about things. Whereas, 20, 30 years ago, you could just kind of do what you wanted and no one really cared, or no one really heard on the microphone. So obviously you've got to be a little bit more careful now with children watching, and you want to be a role model. So it's a shame a little bit that part of that game has gone out the game in terms of sledging. But I still think if some of the guys out there, or cleverer guys, wittier guys, are still very good at it. But yeah, I think as a team, Australia are still very good. They get together and they know how to try and intimidate someone. And I think especially as a lower order batsman, when you've got 2 or 3 fast bowlers like Josh Hazlewood's start coming to bowl at you, when you've got that, that's bad enough. But when you've got a whole team of people around you as well, kind of getting into you, it does affect you mentally, and it makes it a lot harder. So Australia are good at it, but I think they were better at it when they had probably a slightly stronger side and some slightly cleverer brains in Warne and Gilchrist and Hayden and Ponting and these sort of guys.
Chris, in the documentary The Edge, Stuart Broad says it's Test cricket in particular is 10% technical and 90% mental. Do you think sledging was so prevalent because it is such a kind of sport where you need to be so clear and so concentrated on what you're doing?
No, 100%. It's like I said, you go into a Test match, you like you do in county cricket, you don't change when you go from county cricket to international cricket. The level goes up, the standard goes up, and the mental toughness goes up. Obviously, you're on TV, you're against better players, but yeah, it's just hard. You're in it for 5 days. It's a game of patience, isn't it? Test cricket, as a bowler and a batsman, it's who kind of breaks first, and yeah, it's just very tough from that point of view. Having to run in and bowl 20, 25 overs a day as a bowler, that's tough. On your day, like you said, at games like the MCG, when you can bowl a side out for 100, that's great. It seems easy, but the games where you're 160, 170 overs in the field, as a bowler, that is very tough to just keep going and keep going. You've got to try and dig deep and find something from within sometimes to keep going on days like that. And guys like Stuart Vaughan, Jimmy Anson, who've been doing this a lot longer than I have and still playing now. Like Jimmy is, I think he's half a year younger than me, and I've been retired nearly 6 years. It's absolutely incredible that his toughness is still able to, not just physically but mentally, just be able to keep going the way he is. It's incredible. But yeah, it is a tough game. If you're a batsman, for example, as well, if you're out of form and you've scored a run of low scores, mentally, that again is very tough to come out of that to try and get that 100 you're searching for, and you've got commentators kind of sledging you and getting into you. It's a tough game, but that is international sport at the end of the day.
I was going to ask you actually, Chris, about how do you deal with the pressure of expectation from fans and pundits, ex-professionals, because the likes of Nasser Hussain, Michael Vaughan, they like to be fairly outspoken and strong in their views. Do you tune into that during your playing career, or do you try and blank that sort of stuff out?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's tough not to listen to that sort of stuff, because you will watch the highlights naturally when you get back to your hotel and things like that. But I think it is tough, and I think some of the more experienced players, they'll turn off their Twitter, they'll turn off the online news and stuff during the test match. Obviously you'll get fag ends of this stuff when your mates tell you stuff, but yeah, I think, like I said, the best players, and when you're in that kind of bubble of your own team, you try not to kind of think about what the media are saying too much. You're just trying to think of yourself, think of the team, of what's going on, because people are going to be talking outside of your kind of bubble, and you just got to get on with it. And like I said, it's very different when you're in a side, or in a squad or a tour, as opposed to me sat here now watching it on TV. It's very different. You kind of tune in more to what commentators are saying, but it is very, very different when you're on the inside, and you're there behind the scenes, seeing what's going on, how people are feeling. It's sort of not all smooth sailing for everyone mentally, physically, and all the other little things that people don't see. Guys being injured, have niggles, having injections behind the scenes, having physio, doctor appointments all the time. They're the things that people don't see. People might have had a fight with their wife or their girlfriend the night before a test match. These are all the little things that us sat on the sofa don't see. But obviously, when you're in that kind of situation in the team, all those little things can add up and make it harder at times. But that's at the end of the day, sportsmen are still human beings and have off the field issues. But when they step on the field, it's just trying to forget all those things and do the best you can as an individual and as a team.
That's excellent insight to what goes on behind the scenes. Did you have any superstitions, or what was your match preparation like, getting yourself in the zone, as it were, for a game?
But yeah, for me, it was just trying to be as relaxed as possible, really. And I think the older I got, I learned how to do that better. I think as a youngster, I was probably a little bit more nervous and used to think about the negatives a bit more than the positives. But I think after 3 or 4 years of county cricket, I kind of really started to believe that I was good enough to be there. And I went in with a different mindset, as opposed to, what's going to go right rather than what could go wrong. And I think everyone has that at some point in their career. It's getting to that point in your career where you really feel like you belong there, international, whether it's county cricket or international cricket. But yeah, typically, the last 13, 12 years of my career, when I was certainly confident with my ability, it was just trying to be as relaxed as I could, knowing my kind of pre-match routine, little things I would have to do to be ready to step on the pitch. There'd be certain things with the physio that I'd have to have. There'd be certain painkillers. A lot of the time I'd be making sure I've got in my body before I, start to bowl. They're another things that people don't really see, but, I'd be waking up and make sure I've taken my pills at the right time. I've had my body strapped up at the right time. making sure I warm up and stretch before I get on the field, half an hour before, then another little stretch before I go and bowl again. And then obviously when I was batting, I'd probably have a little more superstitions. I can't remember, but everyone does it. But the way you put on your pads and your shoes and your box and the way things feel, that's just little individual superstitions that everyone has. But mentally, it was just trying to be as relaxed as I could, and just try and go out there and perform and do my best, really. But the preparation is always, like anything in life, really. Preparation is key. If you're not prepared, you're probably going to fail. So it is very important that you, whatever works for you, in preparing for something big like a cricket match or whatever, then it's just trying to go through that routine every time. And for me, like my gym routines now, is if I'm prepared to know what I'm going to do, I'll get better results because I know I'm prepared, rather than just going in there willy-nilly and just hoping for the best.
So, Chris, most people would have a defining moment in their career, which is their lowest point, which maybe sets them on a trajectory to set them on an upward curve and onto success. Have you got a defining moment in your career, your lowest point?
I'd say there's probably a couple from memory. I'd say 2005, I was involved in the Ashes squad, but I wasn't picked in the team. Later that year, I had to then go and have quite a nasty surgery on my hamstring tendon, which put me out for a good kind of 9 months, and I wasn't able to go on that Pakistan tour with England that year. So that was kind of having a taste of things in 2005, which was probably the biggest year ever in cricket, certainly I can remember. And then having that kind of taken away was very disappointing. But luckily for me, I came back in 2007 and played for England in Test cricket. That's when I made my debut. But then I had another, I guess, 2 or 3 years out the side where I kind of felt a little bit lost. I felt like I deserved to be there. I played 3 Test matches for England, done pretty well, taken 13, 14 wickets in a series against India. But then the likes of Steve Harmison, Hogarth came back into the side, Stuart Broad made his debut. Then I had another couple more injuries, and I just felt like I was kind of wasting away a little bit in county cricket. I felt like I was still good enough to be with England, but for different reasons and circumstances, and timing of tours, injuries, it just didn't work. And then I guess it came about where I finally made the decision to leave Hampshire, which was a very tough decision for me, because it was a club I always played for as a kid and grew up and always wanted to play and thought I'd always stay there. I had to make a really tough decision whether to stay loyal to Hampshire and stay in the city that I'd always kind of lived in and grown up, and moved to London, I guess, to chase my England dream again. And I took that decision not lightly, but at the same time, I thought if I was ever going to get back into the England side, and especially from the way I was feeling, just low and not really going anywhere. I remember we won the C&G Trophy in 2009, and it was a great occasion and a fantastic day, and I bowled well and the team played well, but there was just something missing deep down that I wanted to fulfill, and that was just getting back in an England side. That's what I really wanted. So from the outside, everything seemed probably good, but deep down I was probably struggling because I just wanted to play for England again. That was probably like the defining moment. It was moving clubs and going to Surrey, and it was tough at times, playing for a new club and making new friends and teammates. But ultimately, it got me back to where I wanted to be, and then, like I said, I wouldn't have experienced those times in Australia and getting back in England setup and things like that if I hadn't have done that. So, for me, certainly it was the right decision. But at the time, there was a couple of low points or low years, at Hampshire, not really feel like I was going anywhere and not really enjoying my cricket. So, but I think at some point, every player over a 15, 20 year career, if they're lucky to kind of achieve that, they're going to have some low moments in there as well as the good ones.
Yeah, of course. I think, and it proved to turn out a good decision in the end. You went on to star in that Ashes series that we mentioned earlier. Just on that note, do you do any kind of visualization of what you wanted to achieve, that squad going and winning the Ashes? I saw recently a former Canadian downhill skier used to keep a photocopy of a gold medal in his pocket and carry it around with him for 6 months prior to a Winter Olympics. So every time he put his hand in his pocket, it reminded him what the goal was and why he was doing what he was doing. Did you have anything like that when you went into chasing that Ashes in 10-11?
Yeah, I mean, I guess not specific to the Ashes, but those years I've just kind of spoken about when, you know, I was out of the side of England, and I remember watching like Graham Onions bowling on the TV, Saj Mahmood bowling on the TV, Tim Bresnan bowling on the TV. And a lot of the time I would be in the gym rehabbing or training, and a lot of the time these guys would be bowling on the TV. And I just remember being motivated, whether it be in the gym or whatever, my training, just to take that as motivation and think that I should be there. I believe that I'm better than those guys. I should be there. So that was definitely one thing I remember, you know. And even if I had a little setup at home as well. If I was ever training and the cricket was on, I'd have it on as motivation that I want to be back there. I should be there. That was certainly something that pushed me. Was seeing those guys on the TV, and like I said, if I was rehabbing or you know, doing my training in the gym, I would always try and push myself a little bit harder to try and get back there. And I think mentally, for me, if I felt like I was putting in the work and giving it my all, I felt like, you know, sat here today or other times, if I know that I put in the hard work and tried my best, even if I didn't get back there, I wouldn't have those regrets that I didn't do that. Because there's a few times in anyone's career when you know you're kind of cruising a little bit and you can get away with it. But, you know, if you do get injured or you don't perform, you get found out eventually, and you have to look yourself in the mirror and go, I didn't quite do those things. I didn't quite put in the hard work. So something that I always try to do, whether I spent too much time in the gym or bowled too many balls in the nets, it was, for me mentally, sometimes I just had to do that because I didn't want to have those regrets that I didn't put in the work. And I think a lot of players, they work like that. They want to feel like they're putting in the work and they truly believe that they've done everything to get there. Some guys will cruise, some guys will get away with it, but I think if you do that, you know, long enough, it will catch up with you. And especially in your kind of later years, when you get a bit older, it does become a lot harder physically and mentally. And that's why I, you know, again mentioned earlier, like the likes of Jimmy Anderson, he's been, you know, doing these things for 20 years and he's still at the top. So it just shows that his kind of routine or whatever he does to motivate himself to keep going, it's working. So I think everyone has their own way of doing it. But for me, for that Ashes, I knew it was coming about, and I knew it would be my last chance really to go to Australia. So for me, it was just every time I went out to play for Surrey, and it was my first year at Surrey, I just wanted to put everything into it. I wanted to bowl as quick as I could. I wanted to create a new perception of myself, because I had this perception at Hampshire probably over a 10-year period that, you know, I was a bit laid back and whatnot. I just wanted to try and create a slightly different perception of myself going somewhere else. And I think when you move counties, you can kind of do that because teammates see you in a new way, whereas obviously my old teammates saw me in an old way. It was just going out with a slightly different attitude and a little bit more of a selfish attitude that I'm going to try and be someone else and just try and prove people wrong. And so that year in 2010, bowling for Surrey, it was just like all or nothing, just give everything every game and try and keep taking wickets or scoring runs or whatever, and just try and get back into that squad. And luckily I had a great season, and it was probably my only season where I didn't have one injury. The stars kind of aligned that I was able to get back and get picked for that squad.
Chris, just on the hard work piece there, if you could pick one quality in a teammate, either hard work or talent in a sports setting, which one would you choose?
I mean, it's kind of cliche, but I do think talent does only get you so far. I think you do have to have the talent to get there. I think if you don't have any talent, I don't think just pure hard work is going to get you there. I think you have to have some sort of talent. You know, guys like Alistair Cook, I don't have any talent. and I've worked hard. He does have talent, clearly, but there are guys that do that. Naturally, you'd say aren't as talented as others, but they work their nuts off. They do whatever they can day in day out to get better. And some guys, they can get away with it, but and it's sometimes the guys that have the talent and they might not appear to be putting in the hard work, but behind the scenes, they really are. I mean, Kevin Pietersen for me is one. Like, everyone thought that this, he had this amazing talent, but people thought, he just, because of the way he kind of cruised around the nets and was pretty laid back, and people just thought, he just do what he want, turn up. But behind the scenes, he was training as hard as anyone. He'd be in, running, swimming, whatever it was. Like, he'd train his butt off. And behind the scenes, he'd be hitting extra balls, the things that people didn't see. He'd be working hard. But yeah, I think to answer your question, ultimately, I think you do need to have some sort of talent to begin with. But the best guys, they do work, not always the hardest, but they will still work really hard. So, but I think if you want longevity in any kind of sport or job or whatever, like, you're always going to have to put in the hard work, and you have to keep at it and keep doing the right things right, because again, like, they will catch up with you if you take your foot off the gas. And there's been plenty of players I've seen start their careers really strong, and they've got to 25, 26, and they thought, this is easy, start drinking too much, or they take the foot off their training and they start getting injured, and they wonder why they're kind of not where they were before. And sometimes if you get out those good habits, they're hard to get back. So yeah, I think it's just keeping the good habits, working hard, and I think if you have that kind of mindset, you give yourself the best chance of doing well. And I think mentally, it puts you in a good place knowing that you've put in the work, especially when you sit back now and you've retired and your time is gone. I don't sit here with any regrets, and I look at England and youngsters on the TV, and I want them to do well. I don't sit here kind of sour face going, oh, I should have done that and I should have done that, because I know there's some cricketers that have that kind of regret, that they didn't perhaps fulfill their potential and whatnot. So yeah, I sit here. Obviously, at times I made a few mistakes, but I learned from them, and I sit back here with no regrets, and I'm happy with the way my kind of career turned out. Even though if I didn't have as many injuries and whatnot, I probably could have played a bit more, but it's just the way it kind of panned out, and I just accept it for what it is, really.
There's some valuable points you make there that don't just relate to elite sport. I think they relate to life in general, about not taking your foot off the gas.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's one thing I've learned, kind of going into like more of the business world outside of cricket. Like, there are so many things that line up, and so many things you learn in sport with leadership and working as a team, all these sort of things. Communication breakdowns, all these things you kind of see with different teams I've been involved in. A lot of it transfers to the real world. It takes a bit of adjusting, because you're kind of used to playing in a sports mindset, and you are in this kind of cricket bubble where you see the same people year in, year out. But there's certainly so many things that I've transferred from cricket over into real life. And most cricketers, they fear going into the real world after cricket. But I think once you get out there and you realise a lot of the things you do learn as a cricketer, generally a lot of guys will be stood in quite, fairly good stead once they do step out of the cricket arena into the real world.
That's a good point you make, as the next question I was going to come on to about preparing for retirement. Did you know you suffered with injuries, which I know was a bit of a blight on your cricket career? Did you know a way out before you actually retired that the end was coming, and were you already preparing for life after cricket?
I think I had like a rough idea of a few things I wanted to do. There wasn't like I'm definitely gonna do this when I retire. I wasn't doing like exams and setting up a job, while playing cricket. Some guys are that kind of proactive, and I take my hat off to guys that are that proactive. But I guess it's sometimes hard, especially when you're playing for England and things like that, and you have injuries. That takes enough of your time, and mentally you're giving everything you can to try and be the best you can. But I think, yeah, probably 33. So 32, 33, I probably started to think about it a little bit more. I was having a few more problems with my body. I was on 1-year contracts at Surrey. And it was just there's a bit more. There's actually a bit more pressure in some regards because you're trying to pay your mortgage and things like that. But I've always had that comfort of a 3-year contract when I was younger. But there was a bit more pressure towards the end of my career. I mean, I think the last 4 or 5 years I had 1-year contracts. So my body was, I had to look after it as best I could, and I also needed a little bit of luck where I was hoping I wasn't going to get injured. But I think in the back of my mind, I always like had a few ideas of what I'd like to do. I'd always had an interest in property throughout my career. As I said, I had a few injuries, and some winters I'd do up a couple of little rundown flats and things like that as a kind of a hobby. And property was something I always kind of understood and enjoyed doing, along with a few other friends that I knew that liked that sort of thing. So, but then I met someone at Surrey called Tom Jewell, who's one of the younger players, and it was a year before I retired. He kind of said, I'm going to set up a property company, and we kind of saw kind of eye to eye to there. And then when he retired the year before me, but in 2015 I kind of went into kind of partnership a little bit with him. And what we do now is we kind of we search investments for investors and look after their portfolios. So so if you've asked me that kind of 10 years ago, would I be thinking that's what I was going to be doing? Probably not. But it's kind of like just naturally gone that way. I actually retired in September in 2015, and in October, November, I had a suit on, and I was kind of walking around meeting new people and going to networking events. And I guess I just tried to kind of forget about cricket, even though it was quite tough. It was still in the back of my mind. But at the same time, it was a bit of a weight off my shoulders that I didn't have to keep bowling, and I wasn't worried about injury anymore. But I thought the best way was to just get stuck into this new world that I'm going to go into. Think what am I going to do now? It's more just like go with the flow and try and make something work of an idea that we had. And kind of 5-6 years later, we're still going, and I'm still enjoying it. And our business has come a long way over the last 5 or 6 years. It's taken a lot of work and a lot of growing and speaking to a lot of people, meeting a lot of people. But it's been enjoyable along the way, and it hasn't made me miss cricket. I've enjoyed the kind of natural process of starting something new and seeing it grow. And on the other hand, my hobby is kind of still kind of staying fairly fit, and I like to lift weights and that sort of thing. But that kind of mentally keeps me sane, and I think that still keeps my kind of adrenaline going from the kind of cricket sports side of things. I like that kind of challenge still with something in the gym, or a competitive against myself. I guess that's what I like. So I just try to kind of beat myself in the gym each week or each year, whatever. Like, it's just having something to keep my brain ticking over outside of work related things.
Yeah, no. I mean, to be fair, you just answered the question I was going to ask there, Chris. Obviously, the weightlifting, it's not just from some of the photos we've seen online. It's not just picking up the odd weight there. You've seemed to have really gone into it. So, is it? I mean, was that a natural progression for you, or as you said, it was just trying to compete against yourself?
Yeah, I think as a cricketer, like, I always quite liked lifting weights, and my nickname was Twiggy, and I was like tall and skinny cricketer, but I always wanted to be a bit bigger. But playing cricket, there's kind of like a limit, especially as a bowler. There's kind of a limit you can kind of get to. So, and even that, I was always sometimes pushing the boundaries of how big you should be as a bowler. And I had physios and training saying, "Oh, you're probably getting a little bit too big" and whatnot. So there's always kind of a limit you kind of had to, I guess, stay at. And I thought when I retired, I don't have to be running around anymore. I don't have to be bowling anymore. So I'll just kind of start lifting weights a little bit more seriously and kind of see where I can kind of get to it, really. And it's just become a bit of a hobby. It's not just about picking up as the heaviest weight as possible and trying to lift as much as possible. It's kind of like a combination of, how can I change my body? So, like, there's different training in terms of bodybuilding, powerlifting. I've kind of tried different things, and it's more just like a bit of fun at the same time, but at the same time, I want to look after myself. Like I said, I've enjoyed the challenge of trying to get stronger every year, especially as I kind of keep getting older every year. It becomes a lot harder. I've got a young boy who's 2, I've got another one on the way. So again, it makes it a little bit harder when you've got kids to keep fit, but at the same time, it makes it a lot easier. I think if you, for me, if I'm staying fitter, chasing them around the house and picking up things all the time, it makes it a little bit easier. But for me, it's just like we've got since lockdown and stuff, we've created a little gym in the garage here. It's just nice to have that hour a day or hour and a half, whatever, if I've got the time, just to go in there and have my set goals, whatever it is. They change all the time. Just to have something to focus on, just to push myself, whether it to look better, to get stronger, to get fitter. My missus is very into her fitness as well, so we kind of push each other there. It's quite nice to have that. But ultimately, it's just trying to just have something outside of work and something mentally just to keep me going. And I think people that love fitness, it's like an addiction that you kind of have to train, most of the time. And if you don't train, you don't feel very good. And that's certainly something I've always kind of had, even with cricket. Even though my training was different, I would like to just do something every day, feel like I'm moving. Otherwise, it would just make me feel a little bit depressed. So yeah, a lot of it is just a mental thing, and it just makes me feel good. And I think it's releasing those endorphins and adrenaline, getting in the gym and just doing something. And there are days where I don't want to go in there, but I make myself go in there, and when I come out, I always feel better. So it's just, and certainly over these lockdowns and stuff, it's certainly been a kind of godsend having that in the garage to go in there and have something to work on.
Yeah, I think it's so important to keep your mind in check, however you go about it, whether it's exercising or reading or any kind of exercises like that. It's very important to keep your mental strength.
Yeah.
We're nearly out of time, so one final question: who were your idols in cricket? Who did you look up to?
So from a younger age, I'd say it would have been my dad. From a younger age, I think the older I got, no one wants to kind of listen to their dad, or they kind of pretend that they don't want a hero to, their dad to be their hero. But yeah, I think as a young age, I just wanted to be like my dad and play cricket. And then I think when I started to understand cricket a little bit more, Glenn McGrath was like, for me, he was like the pinnacle of being a fast bowler. And Curtly Ambrose, loved watching those because I was quite tall, obviously, as well. They were 2 tall bowlers who just like hit a line and length, didn't go for any runs. And back in, obviously it's a bit different, but back when I was growing up, or we were growing up, Test cricket was the ultimate. It's a little bit different now. It's a bit strange, kind of, seeing how cricket has evolved. But just hitting a length and not going for any runs, and just being able to nick people off was just something I loved watching. And Glenn McGrath and Ambrose were the kings of that for me. And then like guys like Ricky Ponting, Tendulkar, watching these guys when I was a bit younger, they were kind of my idols. And Shane Warne was always someone, just loved the way he kind of went about things. And he didn't do things to the book, and obviously he was a bit controversial the way he went about things, but always loved watching him on TV. And then I got to play with him at Hampshire, for 3 or 4 years, which was very surreal. But at the same time, I learned so much off him, and I don't think I would have got to where I am today without his kind of knowledge and him pushing me to believe how good I could have been. So those first 3 years that I spoke about, when my confidence probably wasn't quite there, he certainly helped me believe that I could get to where I wanted to get to, because I don't think it was really there within my first couple of years of playing for Hampshire. So yeah, I learned a lot of guys like that. And yeah, so to watch someone from a young age like Shane Warne, with confidence and seeing how he goes about things, and then kind of having him in your dressing room, kind of telling you how he goes about things and how I should go about things, it was pretty special. And I can't speak about him highly enough, because I wouldn't have I don't think I've achieved what I did without someone like that supporting me.
Final question, 2 parts. Who's the best player you've ever played against, and who's the best player you've ever played with?
So yeah, again, I'd probably say Warne. I think he's just an absolute genius. just the way he went about things. I mean, he lived the rock and roll lifestyle on and off the field. Like, unbelievable how he used to, he'd turn up half cut sometimes, and he'd still go out and get 6-7 wickets. And he wouldn't have any sleep because he'd be up all night doing whatnot. But as soon as he stepped over the line, he was on it. He'd be more on it than everyone else, even if he hadn't had any sleep or if he was still pissed from the night before. He's just unbelievable, and how he just had the energy all the time. I don't know how he did it, and that's why he was so good, and and that's why he went on to take 700 odd Test wickets. And I'd say Ricky Ponting, just someone that I always looked up to as a youngster. Just thought he was a phenomenal player, watching him on the TV growing up. And then, I only bowled against him a couple of times from international level, but, just felt intimidated running into bowl. If I got my length slightly wrong, I just felt like he was going to pull and hook me into the stands. As I briefly touched on earlier, I think it was my second or third ball to him at Perth that I ever bowled to him. He pulled me off my length, and I thought, God, this is tough. But yeah, I think for me, Ricky Ponting, just phenomenal career. Some people will say he might have played a little bit too long, and that's why his record probably dropped a little bit towards the end. But at the same time, he was doing it for the good of Australian cricket as well, because they were kind of a young rebuilding side. So Ricky Ponting in his best years, I think he was a fantastic player. Not just the runs he scored, but the catches he took, and I guess the changes and influences he had on certain sides. I'd say he was probably like the best player I played against.
Good stuff. Chris, thanks ever so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been a pleasure to chat to you.
Thank you, Chris.
No worries at all. Yeah, it's been really good fun.
See you soon.
Cheers, Chris.
Cheers, guys.
Cricket it's not a non-physical sport, is it? It takes a huge toll on the body, especially medium fast-paced bowler. You are it. If you're bowling stuff at 90 miles an hour, it's going to take a huge impact on your body, which has obviously pretty much resulted in why he's had to stop.
I think that's the misconception a lot of people have of cricket, as you rightly pointed out, is that it's not much running around, when it is really, but they see people sort of stood around in the field. It's short, sharp bursts. Yeah. But that's where the mental agility comes into it for me as well, because it's over 5 days. A test match is over 5 days, very long. And there's so many facets to a game of cricket. But mentally, but as you quite rightly say, the physical demands of a fast bowler, that the stress going through the body, of the knee, the foot landing on the pitch, and the arm coming over to get that ball to go 90 miles an hour down to the batsman. It's huge, and wicket-keeper behind is diving left, right, and centre for 6-7 hours a day. It's physical demands are huge, and I think that's why someone like Chris, who had some injuries throughout his career, and probably career ended 2 or 3 years earlier than he would have liked. It's just luck of the draw and how your body holds up, I suppose.
No, definitely. It's also completely understandable, and that how if you watch that documentary The Edge, as you mentioned in the interview there, I think it was Jonathan Trott, and he said concentration is the absence of irrelevant thought. Now, cricket, from the outsider looking in, is and I'm an outsider. I'm not a huge cricket fan. I did watch it when I was a kid a bit, before it obviously then went on Sky and Channel 4 couldn't play it anymore. But it's almost the perfect team sport in a way, because it's split between a sort of solo game, if you like, which is standing on the boundary, taking flack from the fans, waiting for that ball to come near you, obviously fielding, you then bowling's an individual thing, batting's an individual thing, although you run as a pair. So for him to take that mindset from complete concentration and obviously take it into the business world, it's much more transferable than quite a lot of other sports, I'd say. Yeah,
it's a good point. And I think another question which we didn't get around to asking Chris, but it's worth noting, is I kind of touched on it with the retirement question, but where there is so much pressure on you mentally, there have been a lot of cricketers that have suffered, notably Jonathan Trott, had to withdraw and come home from England squad for suffering with mental problems, with depression and such. Like Marcus Trescothick, another very, very successful England batsman, he came home from a tour once, suffering just mentally, just tired, exhaustion, and really unfortunately, if you compare the rates amongst other sports, cricket has a unusually high suicide rate, right. Which is astonishing to think of, really, and very sad at the same time. I don't know why that is. I'll have to go away and look up the ins and outs of the reports, but it's definitely a very challenging game, and it does mentally weigh. But I think being a professional sports person, or anyone that's in the public eye, there's a huge amount of pressure on you, I imagine anyway, to perform and come up with results, and you've got to always be on your A game. And I think sometimes that pressure just becomes too much for people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've only got to compare it to just, let's say, in inverted commas, normal life. If you've got 2 young kids and you've got a business, or you've got parents to look after now, if cricket, people retire in their sort of late 30s. If you I'm in my late 30s now, and it's that sort of age, just, and I'm not a sportsman, but it's that sort of age where, your kids look up to you, your parents look down to you for support. Your colleagues look across to you for support. Family members, extended family members. It seems to be that sort of decade where everyone's looking at you for the answer. And then to chuck in, a tour of Australia, away from the family, or let's say a sprinter, at the Olympics, to chuck, those pressures don't go away. They're still family men and women, aren't they? Sportswomen. And so, and then to chuck all that on top and then televise it, no wonder there's issues, and maybe that needs to be looked at further. Definitely. I
always think that's a good point you make about athletics. I always think, take a sprinter as probably the best example. The amount of training and sacrifice and dedication these guys and girls go through, and what's a 100-meter sprint? Less than 10 seconds. You get that wrong, or something goes wrong, or your preparation's not right, or something throws you off course, like Chris spoke about it, stuff that we don't see, maybe a disagreement with a family member, or something happening in your personal life which doesn't come across to us as the viewers, and that just throws 4 years of hard work away. And that pressure to deal with is just monumental.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, if you compare the 100-meter sprint to 5-day cricket, so that's 2 completely different timescales, isn't it? But
with the same pressure.
Totally agree.
That's it for another Mindset Musings podcast. Thank you for listening. We really do appreciate our listeners and the feedback that we receive.
We hope you have either been entertained or gained something of value from the show. If you have, can we please ask you to leave us a 5-star iTunes review, or a review wherever you feel is relevant. Please feel free to follow us on Instagram at mindset.musings. Our personal Insta handles are included in the bio.
Drop us a DM. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.